going through the program and seeing that like 2 of the 3 head instructors are female was great for me to see. It just makes you realize that you can get in there and do it.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Fine Homebuilding Contributor and Production Manager at TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwandt. Today, I'm joined by Carpenter Leah Stargardter. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. So welcome, Leah. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, if you're watching this on the YouTube feed, you can see that it is Halloween, and I epically failed in dressing up, which is par for the course for me.
You got all day.
That's true. I do have all day. I'll have to come up with a good costume by the end of the day. So Leah, you're a self-employed carpenter here in Madison. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about the work you do and what it's like to be self-employed?
Sure. So I just started working for myself about 2 years ago. So I've got the scope of 2 years so far, but the work I do is residential remodeling and small scale remodels, nothing enormous. It's mostly just me. And I sub out a few things, the electrical, plumbing, drywall. And I've got one friend that can help me pretty regular these days, but for the most part, it's just me. So the size of stuff is limited to that. I was doing a bit of like, just to get my feet on the ground, I was doing some like handyman stuff, handywoman stuff, but I'm not quite sure that's the direction I want to steer my company. So yeah, smaller size remodels.
Do you have goals for future size of work that you want to do that maybe involves having employees or having a larger footprint as a company?
At the moment, I don't. I'm not so sure. I think being kind of like light on my feet in that way, is more where I'm at right now. It's definitely possible that would change, but I think once you bring employees into the game, it gets it gets a little more stressful. I think that there's some freedoms to being just one person that I really like right now. So yeah.
A good friend of mine who is a self-employed woodworker was fond of saying that being self-employed is a lifestyle decision. Is that kind of the way you're thinking of it right now? You have that freedom to do what you want?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I think that, that's well put. It's also tricky because you can be your own harsh boss. So you got to kind of reel yourself in to maintain that, quality lifestyle. But I'm excited and happy that I made the decision to be self-employed. So I don't think I'll go back.
How long did you work for a company before going out on your own?
I worked for a small company for about 10 years. So yeah, I learned a lot. It was a great experience. Do you know Trimcraft Builders?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's who I worked for. And yeah, they do high-end remodeling. It was a really great environment to learn and work in.
Did you do mostly carpentry work there, or did you move up into any project management roles?
Yeah, so yes, I moved up into project management roles, but it's a very casual environment. So I'm not sure we're ever really like necessarily calling it that, but like lead carpenter, running the project. It was, but I was still hands-on carpenter at the same time.
Yeah, some of the companies, when you get into those positions, then you lose that tradesperson aspect to what you're doing, and you become a full-on manager, which in the people I've been around helps determine which way you go when you go out on your own. If you doing most of the work yourself, trying to keep a small footprint like you said you're doing, or if you try and expand and have employees, it helps if you have that sales and managerial background.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I love that part, the sales and managerial.
How do you get most of your projects? Is it people that you've connected with over the years from being in Madison?
Yeah, it is. A bit of it has been some stuff from Trimcraft. They've sent some work my way, and yeah, just people that I know from town. Yeah, it's been all word of mouth. I have got a street sign, but other than that, no like advertising or anything. I really prefer to have it be word of mouth and have there be some sort of like accountability, kind of know who people are before you get into their house. Yeah.
Especially with the risk level that you can have as a single individual doing the work. One nefarious client can really ruin a long period of goodwill that you've put into your business.
Yeah. Well said. Totally.
Are there projects that you have coming up that are things that you're really looking forward to getting into that are maybe pushing your skill set or pushing your current setup?
Yeah. So yeah, totally. The project that I'm on right now is very much that. It's a 2-story addition, small addition, like 10 by 14. And right now I'm like, it's all encompassing in my brain to frame the irregular hip roof. I'm like totally obsessed. I'm totally obsessed with this. And it's been a blast because I think I got it on the run. And yeah, a couple of kitchens, that's the next sort of thing. And maybe another 2-story addition down the road. Yeah, possibly do something with helical piers instead of pouring a foundation. That could be super interesting.
Yeah, helical piers are great. If you can get the drill piece of equipment back there, they can save you a lot of time. I know we prefer to use them whenever we can.
Yeah. I did one porch earlier this summer with helical piers, and it like blew me away how fast it went. That they were done in an hour, and they don't need to inspect, and you don't have to wait for concrete to dry or cure. And yeah.
I think it's important when you're working by yourself and self-employed to come up with creative ways to use subcontractors to save you some time and just general effort and things like those concrete piers.
Yeah, I agree. And figure out how to, not just burn up my body. Yeah.
How did you come into being a tradesperson? Did you have other tradespeople in your family, or was it just in enjoying working with your hands and that's what led you here?
Yeah, my Uncle Benny was a carpenter, and I saw how much he loved the work and loved being able to cut out early and go play tennis or whatever. And he seemed like he was having a great time, made a great life for himself. And as a kid, I built a lot of tree houses. So if you'd asked me when I was a kid what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would have said a carpenter. And then I sort of, veered and wandered around for a while, worked as a machinist and a welder. It was my first real job as an adult, building bicycle frames, which was cool because it was, I was able to see that I had mechanical aptitude and liked the work. And and then I ended up moving to Madison and went through the tech program, the carpentry program at MATC. And I realized that I really liked carpentry. And yeah, kind of found some work through them, and really liked it and kept going.
Can you talk a little bit about what the Madison College program is like? We have a lot of people at TDS that came out of that program, and through my interactions with people through the podcasts and going around the country, I've come to realize that most places don't have the luxury of a dedicated remodeling program like we have with the Madison College.
Yeah, it is pretty special. Yeah, I would say the instructors are very dedicated. Yeah, and I going through the program and seeing that like 2 of the 3 head instructors are female was a great for me to see. Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's a good support network. They make it very clear that they've got your back and that they can be a resource, like going forward and landing you work. And they kind of just like know everybody. So it's a great way to like, to place you in work, but also like even when you're in work to like network you with subs or information that you need to like get stuff going. And they're a lot of fun.
Did you work on any of the tiny house builds in the school parking lot?
Yep. That was going on when I went through there. Yeah, and I think actually that was the draw that like got me into the program. I saw that they were building tiny houses, and that had a big appeal. I think even before I was realizing that carpentry could be a career path, I was interested in like just seeing how building a tiny house would be. It's sweet. They've got all that room to like put up a house and work hands-on as they go through the steps, as they're teaching the steps, like in the classroom, then they can go out and just build.
I did a little bit of teaching in the estimating class with John Stefani, and I was really impressed at how much dedication they put into some of that behind the scenes business stuff. So I think it would be really easy to just skip over all of that and get right to the building the tiny house or learning how to frame your irregular hip roof. So did you enjoy those types of classes as well, or were you really drawn to the hands-on?
I was way more drawn to the hands-on. Yeah. Yeah. The business side, the estimating, that's, it's a little like pulling teeth for me. I'm doing it for my company, but yeah, as a student, I think I put the time in, but not the love.
Yeah. It was interesting teaching the class alongside John for a couple of days and seeing the ones who were really into it and probably looking at more of a career into where I've taken mine, being in the office as opposed to being in the field. But you could definitely tell the people that were just sitting there itching to get back on a saw.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, for some people it just comes naturally to sit and listen. And I find I just, lots of classroom environments are a struggle.
Have you done any of the return stuff to Madison College where they have alumni come in and speak to classes?
I did actually do a little bit of that recently. I think the class is called Nailing It. It's kind of a, I don't know if like a filter class, like they want the students to think carefully and seriously about whether or not carpentry is right for them. So they have people come in the trades in town and just talk about what it's like to be a carpenter. And they can just ask, the students can just ask any questions that they want. So that was really great, actually. It was a good group of students. It looked like, and like a good resource in a lot of ways. A lot of,
What do
Good
you
on.
feel? What do you feel like your experience of having worked for a contractor for that length of time that you did, and then going out to be self-employed can help those students with? I would think a lot of them maybe have your career path in mind when they set off on that program.
Yeah, yeah, that is kind of what I pitched. I thought it was a good path to take, learning for so long under somebody else. We didn't necessarily call it an apprenticeship, but I feel like in a lot of ways, the job and the role that I had was a lot like an apprenticeship. And the guys that I worked for were just naturally good teachers. So that was a good environment to learn in. I feel like that you can take on a bigger variety of projects under somebody else, and you'd be able to just diving in working for yourself. And there's a lot of mistakes that you're going to make that get absorbed by somebody else.
Right.
And you can ask questions of somebody who's like right there, which can save you a lot of time, save you from making a lot of mistakes. Yeah, I think some people are just ready. They're just like hungry to work for themselves, and that's cool. But it worked for me to work for somebody else for quite a while.
Yeah, early on in my apprenticeship, I worked under a guy who would tell all of his apprentices, "There's nothing you can screw up that I can't fix," and
Nice.
which really sets the table for somebody to make it okay making mistakes and maybe damaging the occasional thing, which I damaged a brand new countertop one time, which I found out that my journeyman I was working under could not fix that. So I proved him wrong eventually, but it was a good experience for me to be in my early 20s and just be turned loose and feel like I didn't have that fear of making a mistake. But that's a good point that's something, if you jump too soon into the self-employed world, you're not going to get that experience.
Yeah. I think right now it's a really great time to shop around for work. That, like, as somebody getting into it, that you could be picky too. That, like, there's so much work right now that, like, if you don't like the environment, you could just go somewhere else. And yeah, I think some people are cut out for more of a breakneck speed, like super fast and kind of a job site. And I enjoyed the more slower paced, high end, like do it right until you got it, kind of a culture. But yeah, there's all sorts out there. I mean, yeah, find the people you like.
What are the challenges of working in an urban environment like Madison? I previously worked in Milwaukee and worked in New York and did some work in Manhattan, but I maintain that the Madison urban environment, especially on the east side of town, is one of the most difficult areas I've ever had to see work performed because of the density and some of the parking and things like that. How do you navigate all those different urban environment things that can slow up a job?
More than Manhattan, really?
So some of the parking here is really hard. The quantity of the facilities for parking and ways to get around the city are lacking here compared to something that's very large and built up for many different industries to work, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah. I have some no parking signs for my job site, and people ignore them all the time. But yeah, I think that there's some parking issues for sure. Like, how are we going to get like the concrete truck in? How are we going to, am I going to have to, the job I'm at right now has been a navigation in like neighborly favors, and yeah, like there are no driveways on for the client's house I'm at, or either side of them. So 2 doors down, we had to ask a neighbor if we could park an excavator and a concrete truck. And everybody, they've been there a long time. They're cool with their neighbors. So that worked out fine. I find that people put dog poop in dumpsters, and that's a thing. But,
and TVs and mattresses.
Yeah, so far it hasn't been over the top insane about the dump, having to cover a dumpster. I haven't, and so far I haven't really had tools walk away. There hasn't been. I hope I didn't just jinx it, but the theft isn't. I've had a few job sites where you just kind of feel the vibe, and have had to spend an extra half an hour every day, putting stuff away or locking up ladders. And I guess the other thing that most days I could do without is when you're working on the front of a house and the foot traffic, and then there's a lot of commentary on the job. Yeah, I think some days it's nice. It's somebody that walks by and you get to see them, and you may not have seen them in a while or whatever, but sometimes it's just you could just, I had a job this summer where I just had to perfect my don't talk to me look, and just go about working and trying not to, that can be a thing. Front porch work is very social.
Yeah, I think you did a front porch right around the corner from our office. That was a pretty high visibility front porch.
Yeah, it was also nice because the hardware store was right across the street, so I could pop in there it wasn't a full trip, it was just a walk.
Yeah.
I forgot something, but I guess I don't know that I've been bummed about the urban environment thing too bad. But then again, it's kind of the only place I've ever worked. So,
right.
Yeah.
It might be more striking to me because of living in a very rural environment. I'm probably a lot more tuned into the odd parking and things like that. But your point about areas in Madison not having driveways or even what would be typical access to the house is definitely one of those things that comes to my mind when I think about how difficult it is to set up and work here.
Yeah.
And the way some of the houses are close enough together that it can make window replacements or siding or getting up onto the roof pretty difficult.
Yeah, totally. I think that, and then in some areas, the preservation committee is so strict, and that's hard to work around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've done a few jobs recently where you scratch your head and think, why aren't we just ripping this front porch off or doing something different here? And then somebody tells you, oh, preservation okayed to this repair that we can do, and that's it. So have you had a lot of experience in having to work with the city and building inspectors and other people like the preservation committees, or are you having the homeowners do a lot of that legwork themselves?
No, I'm doing it, and I hadn't had any experience. That's been a steep learning curve. It's the code book is thick, right? Understanding that I've got all my bases covered as far as code requirements has been hard and good. It's and pulling permits is I guess it's not that hard. And they just if you don't have it right, they tell you what to do, and then you just and then you do it. And and being able to call the inspector and be I'm not quite sure, I'm not clear on this, can we just
right.
So stressful, but also they're just just kind of keep at it, and it comes together. The preservation committee stuff, this job I'm on right now is the first one I've had to personally deal with that. I've been part of job sites where that has been going on in my periphery and understood that it was very much all encompassing. That's certainly don't love this part of the job, but it's all just part of it. So
How much does the admin work like that take up of your normal week? Is it like 25%? I think that's something a lot of people, when they enter becoming self-employed, they don't realize how big of a chunk of their week is going to be spent on those admin related tasks.
yeah, it may be 25%. I haven't broken it down. It's certainly, as the job is being negotiated and started, that's where the biggest chunk of it, it like feels like you just can't get started. But I guess that's kind of where trying to model like smaller remodels, as opposed to like very tiny one-day projects. I think that's part of, I haven't quite broken down what makes the most like viable sense as a business model, but that is sort of like that ratio of like more hands-on work to admin stuff is kind of where, I don't know. I'd love to hear it if somebody understood how to make a living doing small stuff. I'm not sure that's what I want to do, but I'd be interested to hear how they make it viable. Keeping the ratio, keeping the admin stuff as a very tiny ratio would be ideal. But people need to know how much a project is going to cost before they say yes, and you gotta build it right. So all the code stuff is really important. So
Do you typically have multiple jobs going on, where you're using a subcontractor on one and maybe starting another, or do you prefer to run your job completely start to finish before you put yourself out there on another one?
Yeah, so far completely start to finish. But as the one job is finishing up, I gotta be lining up the next one. So that sort of overlap, but not really like having subs at another job, starting stuff for me. As of yet, we'll see. Possibly that'll make sense for for a plumber to get in and start moving stuff around or whatever. But it feels most sane to me to finish something completely before jumping into something else. Yeah. As just one person, I lay awake at night thinking about enough things. Yeah.
Let alone having multiple jobs going on with people that you maybe can't keep tabs on.
Totally. That sounds like too much. But maybe someday my brain will just be so used to this, and I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
You mentioned that the Madison College program had a few female instructors, and that was a big part of the program for you. What are the things that you've seen in your time working for another company and now being self-employed that you think the industry can or should be doing to encourage the building of a more diverse workforce in the future?
Yeah, I think it's a long game. I'm not sure how to do it short term, right? Visibility is huge. I think just seeing somebody like you doing the work just makes you realize that you can get in there and do it. I think getting tools in the hands of kids is a good step, I think. Girls in particular, certainly, minorities, brown people, Black people. I think that, the visibility is a big deal. I think another very much a long game is just that, how do you change the stigma around trades work? I think that's I don't know how to do that, but I think
Well, I
that,
think you're living it, right? You're doing you did a college program, you took an interest that you had growing up, and then you've you turned it into a pretty good job with a company and then spun it off into being self-employed. So your lived experience is the kind of thing that I would think people need to see more of, and see that you can take something that could be an interest and become self-sufficient in doing the work yourself after you've gone through the process of learning it.
yeah, totally. I think that, the visibility, I would say, is a really big one. I don't, that's, it is,
I think I think
it's a
there's a
hard
lot
one.
of opportunities for it in urban areas like Madison. I see areas where, like I live, where it's not very populated, that the trades kind of are that like middle class white guy thing that you do if you don't want to go to college, and it works out for the vast majority of us that go that route, and it's
Mhm.
much better than a college experience for a lot of people like me. But
Yeah.
I think in urban populated areas, there's got to be a lot of other people who would be open to and benefit from a career path like you've started.
Yeah, totally, totally. I think that, yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to,
Yeah, no,
bring that
nobody
all
is, but
together. Yeah,
I think it's a good question to keep asking, and it's certainly something that the Taunton and Fine Home Building is trying to do more of. Uh, at least being the people to ask those questions and figure out what we can do and how we can put other people's experiences in front of people as a model.
yeah, sure. I think that, I wonder how, like a recession, seeing that trades work is recession proof, and just like, being able to like see that it's a viable living, like, and that the tradespeople are just in such high demand right now, and that, I don't know, I don't think, I think that there's a lot to it to change, like, stigma around trades work, but there's like, I wonder if there's a little bit of a change coming. I don't know. Hard to say that it's just being able to see that.
You do wonder what other people think when they see some of our crews on a high profile job like a front porch, or walk by you over the course of a couple of weeks doing the one that you did. If people see that as like, oh, that looks like a real grind, or not something that looks like fun, or if they see it for what you and I have experienced it as, that it can be an interesting challenge and pretty rewarding in the end.
Yeah, there was, wonder what people think. Definitely a lot more commentary on the porch job in particular. In the framing stages, got a lot of advice on how to build. And then once it was into the trim phase, people just didn't have as much to say. Like, maybe that's not as, like, I don't know.
That's interesting that you got more comments during the framing phase of it. What were some of the comments people were giving you, or some of the advice?
Yeah, it was mostly advice on how to frame a porch. It was, yeah. Almost every day for a bit there.
Was any of the advice worth taking, or did you just kind of keep your head down and do what you knew needed to be done?
I would say none of it was worth taking. Yeah, it was. I mean, people like to see the guts of a house, the guts of anything, and so
Yeah.
it's like, it's interesting, and so I think that, that could certainly be part of it, and and then once it was like clear that I had it under control, the comments sort of petered off.
Yeah. I would think it's harder to comment on trim and finish work, especially on a porch like that, because you have to have a certain level of base knowledge where when you're looking at the inside kind of skeleton part of it, you can wing it a lot more with your comments. So I'm
Yeah,
not
totally.
surprised it was much more focused on the part that was going to get hidden.
Yeah, totally. Agreed. Yeah.
Are there any projects that you've done, even with your previous employer, that you were especially proud of the way that it turned out?
I had a job, a kitchen remodel where we tied in like the hex tile into the hardwood, right? Not in a straight line, but in that like sort of like what would you call that, where it's like sprinkled in, and there was a lot of very fine cutting of the hardwood because the hardwood wasn't going to be refinished at all. So cutting all of the shape of the hex tile to meet it, but the tiler didn't want to install tile onto the diagonal skip sheeting underneath the hardwood. So cutting the subfloor below it and then putting in plywood subfloor where the tile was going to go, and then supporting all that from below, and then meeting the tile to the hardwood, and like rounding over the edges of the hardwood, and just finishing that part that got sanded and rounded over, and none of the hardwood had to be refinished at all. Like just like it came together and it looked super sweet. I was super proud of that.
When you do a project like that where you're really start to finish, because I'm assuming you're doing a little bit of demo, you're doing some kind of rework to fit the finish work. Is that something that you find especially satisfying when you're touching the project from really the demo phase all the way to the finish completion?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love. Yeah, another reason why like a larger project would be more something I'd be interested in than just a 1 or 2 day project. That like that satisfaction of having seen it from the get go is so nice. I love demo. I love a little bit of demo. I don't want to do demo all the time, but all the steps of that are really are a lot of fun. And the trim work is so sweet, especially when it's like all yours.
Right. Do you get to do any work on your own house?
When my sweetheart and I bought the house, we were all gung ho to get some stuff done, and we did. We got a bunch of stuff done for the first few years, and we just don't anymore. Kind of, My sweetheart is also a woodworker, and so it's sort of like just we do stuff like that all day. Yeah, it's nice that we don't have to. Nothing's falling apart.
Right.
We'd dig in if we needed to, but we can take a chill weekend and
It's a good spot to be in.
Yeah.
Especially if you've gotten enough done to where it's like in that it's pretty good state, but it doesn't have to be some museum that's reflective of both of your skill sets that you're trying to use as a selling point for future customers to come and see all the great work you did on your house.
Yeah, that's a good point. We don't, I guess maybe someday we'll need that, but right now it's good.
I've found a lot of people that I've worked with who tried to do that to their houses. It became kind of a never-ending project. So I think you've kind of got the right attitude with it of it's good the way it is. Let's do something else with our spare time.
Yeah, you gotta take a breath. A good balance. You gotta find the good balance. Yeah.
So it's been great talking to you, Leah. Is there anything else you want to tell or reach out to our audience about before we go?
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Totally. This has been great. I don't know. Just get out there and get your hands dirty.
It's a great way to end it. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us, and thank you to all for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us whenever you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody, and thanks again for listening.